As an OBGYN, I firmly refused when a pregnant woman asked about the baby's gender. But as she left, I accidentally knocked over the water glass on the table. The next day, she had an abortion. Then, she waited for me after work and stabbed me 18 times, saying as she stabbed, "It's all because of you that I killed my own son. Knowing the child was a boy, why did you tell me it was a girl?" With my last breath, I asked, "When did I say that?" She replied fiercely, "You broke the water glass. Wasn't that telling me that a married daughter is like spilled water?" I fell into the pool of blood in despair. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day she came for her prenatal checkup. This time, I drank all the water in one gulp and put the glass in the drawer. She couldn't misunderstand this time, right? "Doctor, should my baby wear blue or pink?" A familiar voice pulled me back to reality, and my body trembled when I saw who it was. The pain of those 18 stabs still felt like it hadn't disappeared. In my previous life, this simply dressed rural woman had waited for me after work and stabbed me 18 times. All because I accidentally broke the water glass on the table, causing her to misunderstand that the baby was a girl, imagining it as a married daughter being like spilled water. The next day, she had an abortion, but the child was a boy, and his cries echoed throughout the obstetrics and gynecology department. At the time, I didn't pay attention to it. There were many people who cried bitterly after abortions, and I immediately went to the delivery room to deliver babies for other pregnant women, who knew she would wait for me after work and ruthlessly stab me 18 times. "It's all because of you that I killed my own son. Knowing the child was a boy, why did you tell me it was a girl? Do you know how important a boy is to me? I died in the parking lot, less than 5 minutes from the hospital. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day she came for her prenatal checkup. This time, I drank all the water in one gulp and put the glass in the drawer. She couldn't misunderstand this time, right? Doctor, should my baby wear blue or pink?" I glanced at her and replied coldly, "Diapers." The person in front of me was stunned for a moment, but still wouldn't give up. Does the baby look like me or his dad? I suppressed the anger in my heart. Like both of you. She still wouldn't give up. Should the baby be called Yaozu or Hope? The parents decide. She paused. Should I buy skirts or pants for the baby? I was annoyed and losing my patience, but I didn't dare to get angry rashly, so I could only patiently say, "The parents decide." She was still chattering on the other side, and I could only pray in my heart that she would leave quickly, but she seemed determined not to give up until she got an answer. "Dr. Nora, this is Brenda's 4D ultrasound." The nurse pushed the door open and handed me Brenda's 4D ultrasound. I felt like I had grabbed a lifeline and handed the ultrasound to Brenda. "This is your 4D ultrasound. Take a look yourself. I'll go see if your color Doppler ultrasound is ready." After saying that, I pulled the nurse and ran away as if escaping for my life. As I was leaving, I could still hear her shout from behind, "I think my son's legs are quite long." The nurse wanted to say something, but I covered her mouth. The nurse looked angry, and I was confused. "What's wrong?" "Dr. Nora, don't you know? The abandoned baby you saved when you first came to the hospital was adopted by them." I suddenly understood. No wonder the woman looked so familiar. She was my patient when she came to the hospital for polycystic ovary syndrome. And she was the one who adopted the abandoned baby I saved after finding out she had difficulty getting pregnant. No wonder she looked so familiar. Doctor, wait a moment, is this my son's thing?" Unexpectedly, Brenda chased after me and held on to me tightly, determined to make me tell her the baby's gender. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Dr. Nora, quick. Bed 3 is suddenly in premature labor with heavy bleeding." Doctor, is this it?" I was anxious to save lives and didn't want to entangle with her, so I left a sentence. "The 4D color Doppler ultrasound will be delivered to you later. Take a look yourself. I'm in a hurry to save lives." After saying that, I quickly ran to the operating room. Looking back unintentionally, I suddenly saw my ex-boyfriend Dylan talking to Brenda, and she walked away smiling. After coming out of the operating room, I specifically checked the abortion appointment records. There were no appointment records, and I immediately breathed a sigh of relief. I never expected that there would be more trouble later. Brenda's pregnancy was getting bigger and bigger, and she came to the hospital more and more often. Besides prenatal checkups, I tried to keep my distance from her as much as possible. This time she came with her husband, mother-in-law, and daughter. Dr. Nora, do you have children? She smiled like a flower, but the daughter next to her was wearing patched clothes, her head lowered, not daring to speak. I'm not married yet, I said, not knowing why she asked, but there was nothing to hide. She suddenly laughed loudly. You're so old and not married yet. Dr. Nora, in my opinion, what's the use of a woman having education and a job? The key is to marry a good husband. Look at me, I have a good husband, and now I'm pregnant with a son, so my status in the family has risen straight up. All the work in our house is done by those two men, and my mother-in-law too. I was too lazy to listen to her anymore and quickly wrote out a form and handed it to her. Pay the fee first and then do the examination. I thought I could send this great Buddha away, but the man next to her grabbed the form and stuffed it into the little girl's hand. Worthless thing. No sense at all. Brenda also twisted the little girl's arm fiercely. What's the use of bringing you back? All you want is to go to school. Go to school. It's better to marry you off early and get some bride price for your younger brother. I felt so sorry for her that I couldn't help but say, she's only 5 years old, and you're already going to marry her off. Perhaps realizing she had said something wrong, she turned her head and smiled at me. Our worthless thing is useless, Dr. Nora, don't mind. It's useless to raise girls. The girls in our village are all given to people as child brides. Before I could say anything, the girl ran away crying with the form. I felt a fire in my heart for no reason, and after enduring it again and again, I finally spoke. 9 years of compulsory education is mandatory. You can't stop them from going to school just because they're not your own children. As soon as Brenda heard this, her face changed immediately, and she snorted coldly. What's the use of having a lot of education? Aren't you almost 40 and still can't get married? It's still better to marry a good man and give birth to a son. That's what you call a good life. I endured and didn't speak, letting her talk to herself. It's better to stay away from that crazy woman. Brenda's due date was approaching, and she came to the hospital even more often. Every time, she was accompanied by her husband and mother-in-law, but the little girl was never seen. Every time her husband looked at me, his eyes were filled with a strong sense of desire, which was extremely uncomfortable. Brenda also noticed this, and she stood between us with her big belly, saying in an unhappy tone, Dr. Nora, my man is good, right? But no matter how good my man is, you can't keep staring at him, can you? I still have his son in my belly. You like him? If you like him, go find one yourself. What's it called to stare at someone else's man? I almost couldn't help but laugh. Her man was short, his clothes were dirty, he was balding before he was 40, he had yellow teeth, and when he opened his mouth, there was a sewage smell. She can keep this good man for herself. Hearing Brenda say this, her man became even more confident, stuck his little finger into his mouth to pick his teeth, and even winked at me. It was really disgusting to watch. I quickly wrote out the forms, wanting to send these two people away quickly. Who knew her mother-in-law would bring in a cup of steaming gray liquid and hand it to her. Drink it quickly, it won't be effective if it cools down. Brenda's features visibly wrinkled together, filled with resistance. She suddenly asked me in a pleading tone, Dr. Nora, do you think folk remedies for swapping fetuses can work? Looking at the unknown liquid, I roughly knew what it was. The form is filled out, go pay the fees and get admitted to the hospital. I didn't want to and didn't dare to interfere with Brenda's private matters. After getting rid of Brenda's family, I felt relieved, and she was successfully admitted to the hospital. It seemed that her family valued this child very much. Brenda was only 8 months pregnant, and theoretically, she didn't meet the standards for hospitalization. But according to the test results, the child's development was delayed and likely to be deformed. Initially, I asked Brenda to have a deformity screening, but her mother-in-law made a big fuss, insisting that there was radiation that would affect the child, so she delayed it. Brenda now had signs of threatened miscarriage. In any case, she was still my patient, and I had to be responsible for her. During a routine ward round, Brenda's mother-in-law kept staring at her phone. On the hour, she suddenly rushed to the water dispenser like a madwoman, took out a triangular folded yellow talisman from her pocket, knelt and bowed, poured the contents into the water, burned the talisman to ashes, poured the ashes into the water, and handed it to Brenda. Brenda frowned, her face full of hesitation. "Mom, can I not drink it?" Who knew her mother-in-law would say in a stern tone. "You've been drinking it for so many months, what's a few more days?" She also said in a low voice, "You can't miss a dose of the fetus-swapping medicine. Endure it for your son." Brenda was still reluctant. "But Mom, my stomach feels so bad after drinking it." "Feeling bad proves that it's swapping the fetus. Good daughter-in-law, drink it quickly, it won't work when it cools down." Brenda hesitated for a moment, but still forced herself to drink it. Perhaps sensing that everyone in the ward was looking at her, she forced a smile. "My mother-in-law is so good to me. This is a pregnancy-preserving water. Don't overthink it. This was obtained at a great price. You can't get it even if you spend money." Everyone was scientific, looking at her burying her head in the sand. They all looked at her with contempt. Seeing that everyone ignored her, she said again, "You don't know what kind of life I live at home. You would envy me if you knew." I suppressed the corners of my mouth that were about to rise. I really wanted to call, approaching science, and let them study what kind of creature this was. Knowing that Brenda would be staying in this ward for a long time, I avoided her as much as possible. I only did routine ward rounds every day. Fortunately, her weird family didn't affect anyone else. Who knew that before I even stepped into the ward for my routine rounds, I smelled a choking smell of burning paper from afar. All the pregnant women in the ward had run out, leaving only her family. The ward was full of yellow talismans, and ingots and yellow talismans were burning in an iron basin. The little girl they had adopted was forced to kneel on the ground and put her hand over the burning brazier. Several large blisters had already appeared on her small hand, but she didn't dare to get up, her little face pale with pain. Her mother-in-law was still chanting incantations, and her husband kept burning ingots and yellow talismans beside her. I immediately spoke out to stop them. "What are you doing? This is a hospital." Saying that, I was about to step inside, but Brenda's husband pushed me back a long way. "What do you know? The master said that the money-losing girl touched my wife's belly, and the son was swapped away. Now she's atoning and swapping him back. You can't afford to disrupt the ritual." I was speechless. Why do people still believe such things in the 21st century? But her husband had been doing farm work for many years and stood guard at the door. I couldn't get in. Her mother-in-law, like a shaman, pierced the blisters on the little girl's hand, and mixed them into the gray liquid and handed it to Brenda. "Drink it. If you hadn't insisted on bringing home a money-losing girl, saying she could bring back a son, this wouldn't have happened. The master said that if you do this, my grandson can come back. Drink it for another 7 days, and you are guaranteed to give birth to a smart and healthy son." Brenda was sitting on the bed looking pained. It was obvious that she had a threatened miscarriage from the strange things she had been drinking. She drank it without hesitation, and didn't forget to glare at me fiercely. "If you hadn't saved this money-losing girl, I wouldn't have brought her home, and she wouldn't have harmed my son." It was impossible to reason with unreasonable people. It was true that I saved the child, and she repeatedly begged for adoption procedures at the orphanage, but this could also be blamed on me. I was angry and wanted to curse, but I still had to persuade her nicely. "You clearly have a threatened miscarriage now. You can't drink things randomly. Let me examine you." Before she could say anything, her mother-in-law suddenly cursed. "You doctors just want to make money with checkups. Can a checkup guarantee that my daughter-in-law's baby is a son?" Before I could refute, a male voice interrupted. "That's right. You doctors are just scammers. My wife asked so many times whether it was a boy or a girl, and you wouldn't say. I only understood after thinking about it for several months. You meant that my wife was carrying a girl, afraid we would abort the child. If you had told us earlier, we would have aborted it a long time ago, and we wouldn't have wasted this money." Brenda also chimed in. "You are just jealous of others having a good husband because you can't get married yourself, knowing that my health is not good, and that I'm too far along to induce labor. You didn't say so earlier. I think you're too old to marry, probably a hen that can't lay eggs. What's the use of studying so much? This is tradition. You forgot your ancestors after reading a few more books. I think you're just jealous." Under the strange actions of her family, The pregnant women in the same ward either transferred to other hospitals or other wards, fearing any connection to them. For 7 days in a row, her mother-in-law performed rituals in the ward. The entire ward was smoky and murky. The security guards came again and again, but Brenda stopped them all with her big belly. Everyone was afraid of hurting her and didn't dare to act rashly, so they let her do as she pleased. From that day on, her family didn't allow me to do ward rounds, and I had a rare peace. I admired her for it. Even though she didn't like drinking it, she persevered and drank it all in one gulp. I thought that their shenanigans were confined to their own ward, but I was called back to the hospital in the middle of the night. As soon as I stepped into the department, I heard a noisy commotion. A ward doorway was covered in blood, pregnant women were crying everywhere, and all the doctors in the department, including the interns, were treating patients. Without asking, I quickly joined the rescue effort. After working for most of the night, I learned from the nurses that Brenda's mother-in-law had actually sprinkled detergent all over the floor of the wards in the middle of the night. A pregnant woman got up to go to the bathroom and fell to the ground, suffering a difficult labor and massive bleeding, and was still being rescued. Other pregnant women who heard the noise had, to varying degrees, been affected by the fetal movement, while the culprit stood with her arms crossed, sneering. "It's just a little detergent. What a fuss." The pregnant women who had not been affected by the fetal movement learned that the pregnant woman was still being rescued and were still shaken. Hearing her mother-in-law say that, they started arguing. "What a fuss. You're no different from murderers. You're a lunatic. You came to people's bedsides in the middle of the night and waved a yellow talisman, chanting incantations. And you sprinkled detergent on the ground. Not only did you wave the yellow talisman, but you also put cinnabar under my pillow." When the other pregnant women heard this, they all went back to check, and sure enough, there was a piece of cinnabar under each of them. Soon, a group of people took the cinnabar and confronted her family. "What does this mean? Everyone knows that pregnant women can't be exposed to cinnabar. Why didn't you put cinnabar under your daughter-in-law's pillow?" Her mother-in-law actually put her hands on her hips, righteously saying, "What do you know? This is clearing the way for my grandson. Did a piece of cinnabar affect you?" The pregnant women and their families, of course, wouldn't let them off. "Do you know that cinnabar can cause premature birth and miscarriage?" Her mother-in-law suddenly laughed. "Are your babies made of paper? A piece of cinnabar can cause a miscarriage. Then you should thank me for screening out some dregs of society for you. Get out, don't disturb my daughter-in-law's rest, who will compensate if she can't give birth to a grandson." The crowd was furious, almost to the point of violence, when Brenda rushed over, her large belly preceding her. "Let me see who dares touch my mom. This is a son in here. Can you afford to touch me?" Following the principle of yielding to the pregnant, most were persuaded back by their families, and the rest were stopped by the arriving security guards. But someone still came to me. "Dr. Nora, isn't your hospital going to do something about this?" I sighed. Brenda was still my patient, I couldn't ignore it. I've said before, no bringing this superstitious nonsense into the hospital. Have faith in science. The entire family stared at me in unison. "Dr. Nora, science. Science says our daughter-in-law is carrying a girl, so we can't change the fetus." I rubbed my forehead in frustration. Sex is determined by chromosomes, not by drinking some random concoction. Brenda snorted. "I hate how you doctors say all those technical terms. Boy or girl, it's a simple thing to say. Is it really that hard? If you'd told us the sex, I wouldn't have missed the chance for an abortion. The master saw it was a girl, and we spent a lot of money to change the fetus. You should be the one paying for that. We were just praying for my son and let you off easy, and you're still going on about science." Turns out they had consulted a master to determine the sex, who told them she was carrying a girl. That's when the whole fetus-changing business started. Everyone knows it's superstition, but it's like a toad on your foot. It doesn't bite, but it's annoying. Mom, I get it. The master said I can only have 2 women around me. No wonder I've been feeling so unwell. Dr. Nora is a woman. Her mother-in-law looked enlightened. Dr. Nora, we want to change doctors to a male doctor. I was speechless. This is obstetrics and gynecology. There are already few male doctors. This fuss you've made has everyone swamped. No one has the energy to take on new patients. Brenda suddenly shouted. You're just jealous of me. Jealous that I can have a son. That day, that male doctor said you can't have children. That's why you're jealous and won't tell me the sex. I want to switch to that male doctor. He said back then if I wanted to switch doctors to find him, so let's switch to him. No wonder Brenda was happy after Dylan said a few words to her. So he was spreading rumors that I couldn't have children. We broke up back then because we were competing for a spot to study abroad. The hospital considered everything and sent me. He was resentful and that's why we broke up. He's been harboring a grudge ever since I came back. I didn't expect him to actually poach my patients behind my back. If he wants her, he can have her. I really couldn't be happier. I immediately called the director to report and explain the situation. Dylan took Brenda's file with a smile. Sorry, Dr. Nora, the patient trusts me more. I gave a knowing smile. Then good luck to you. Dylan already knew Brenda was eccentric. Her family had been a headache for the hospital for a while. If he could solve this problem for the hospital, he'd definitely get a spot to study abroad next time. Getting rid of that family, I focused on the little girl. I found out that Brenda never went through the formal adoption process after she was burned and abandoned. She forced the little girl to tell the orphanage that she wanted to stay with their family. When the orphanage refused, she caused a scene and hid the child in the countryside. When the police came, Brenda's mother-in-law laid on the ground and made a fuss. I felt sorry for the little girl and went through the formal adoption process, changing her name to Pearl, my precious Pearl. After settling Pearl down, I returned to the department. The premature pregnant woman had successfully given birth to a girl. Brenda's mother-in-law was overjoyed, shouting in the hallway. The master was right, if they have a girl, we're sure to have a boy. I even saw her secretly handing Brenda a bowl of black soup, and they whispered to each other, sharing a knowing smile. It wasn't until Brenda went into labor that I found out it was labor-inducing medicine. Brenda, only 8 months pregnant, and her mother-in-law blocked the entrance to the delivery room together. After listening closely, I realized that Brenda's mother-in-law wanted her to give birth after that other woman, because if someone had a daughter first, the next would definitely be a boy. But who can say for sure? It just so happened that a woman who was full-term was going into labor, and they blocked the delivery room entrance, not letting her in. Brenda, who wasn't due yet, drank the labor-inducing medicine, but wasn't even 1 centimeter dilated. The other woman was already 5 centimeters dilated, but they still wouldn't let her in. Brenda, who wasn't due yet, drank the labor-inducing medicine, but wasn't even 1 centimeter dilated. The hospital definitely wanted the other woman to go first, but Brenda's mother-in-law stubbornly refused. Daughter-in-law, push. You must give birth before them. Okay, Mom. I'm pushing as hard as I can. A crowd of leaders gathered, and Dylan was anxious, quickly trying to reason with them. She's about to give birth, let her in. Brenda replied while pushing. No way. We have to go first. The other woman was showing signs of difficult labor. Dylan couldn't worry about it anymore and quickly arranged for another operating room, rushing to the rescue. I thought they were out of options, but who knew Brenda's husband brought in an ox from somewhere, forcing Brenda to lie on top of it to induce labor. The entire hospital entrance was filled with people. Brenda looked pained, and her mother-in-law was pulling her down hard. Push, push. You have to be ahead of them. Don't worry, Mom. I'll definitely give birth to a son. Hospital leaders tried to reason with them, but were scolded back by her mother-in-law. What's it to you? If we don't have a son, will you compensate us? If that woman hadn't been clumsy and fallen, I wouldn't have let my grandson come out so early. The leaders couldn't do anything, so they looked everywhere for Brenda's attending physician. But Dylan was busy delivering the other baby in the operating room, and had no idea that Brenda had caused such a mess for him. Brenda was lucky to be alive. She had severe bleeding and had her uterus removed. She really did give birth to a son. But the child was born not crying, covered in bluish-purple birthmarks, and was immediately sent to the incubator. The woman in the operating room gave birth to a daughter. Brenda's mother-in-law told everyone she met. Luckily my son was smart and brought in an ox, otherwise they would have snatched our son. Causing other pregnant women to look at her with disdain. When Dylan came out of the operating room, the sky was falling. Brenda's child had congenital disabilities and couldn't breathe on his own. He was sent to the ICU several times within hours of being born. Brenda's mother-in-law blocked the office door and cursed. "It's all your fault. If you had let us go first, my grandson wouldn't be suffering like this. You should pay for everything." She blocked him for days, and his dark circles were drooping to his chin. Just like in my previous life, Brenda's child died. He was premature and couldn't breathe on his own. Brenda held the child in front of Dylan, demanding that he pay with his life. Several people couldn't hold her back. Dylan was annoyed. "It's because you used the wrong method when you gave birth." Brenda's mother-in-law immediately understood and twisted her ear. "I told you to give birth quickly. You must have pressed on my grandson. It's all your fault." Brenda actually believed such a ridiculous reason. "It's all my fault. It's all my fault. I killed my son." Before leaving, Brenda glanced at Dylan, a look I knew all too well. Sure enough, when Dylan got off work that night, Brenda stabbed him 18 times with a knife. "It's all your fault. Why didn't you let me go first? It's all your fault. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have pressed on my son and he wouldn't have died. Now I don't have a uterus, and my in-laws don't want me. It's all because of you." Brenda's voice echoed throughout the hallway, and the floor was covered in blood. I happened to be passing by with Pearl. When Brenda saw Pearl, she suddenly ran towards Pearl covered in blood. "Hope! Hope! My girl!" Pearl looked at Brenda in terror, her small body shrinking back. I shielded Pearl behind me. "Her name is Pearl, a pearl held in my palm, not Hope." "Brenda, your biggest mistake is being too obsessed with sons over daughters. It's all the same whether you have a boy or a girl." I don't know if my words changed her, but she suddenly slumped to the ground, weeping. The police quickly took her away. Finally, we got rid of this troublesome Buddha, and the stone in my heart finally fell. It said that Brenda was sentenced to life in prison for intentional homicide and unwillingness to pay compensation. She went on a hunger strike in prison, demanding to see me. As soon as we met, she lunged at the bars. "You knew it was a son. Why didn't you tell me? If you had told me, I wouldn't have been so superstitious, and my son wouldn't have died." I instantly understood that she had also been reborn. I sneered. "I never said it was a daughter either." Brenda instantly broke down and was dragged back by the prison guards, screaming and shouting. Pearl has already started kindergarten. With my guidance, Pearl has gradually become cheerful, like a little sun.